Got to get back to our top story now, though, and that is the Twitter reaction as we learned that Elon Musk was taking a 9.2% stake in the company. Again, it is a passive stake. So what exactly does that mean? Dan Ives is with us, Wedbush Managing Director and Senior Equity Analyst. Dan, it's good to see you. I mean, what does it mean? Like when Elon Musk reports a passive stake, does that mean he's not going to chime in at all? I mean, to expect Elon Musk to be quiet on a company that he's taken this size of a stake in, that seems a little unrealistic, doesn't it?
Look, this is just the appetizer. I mean, ultimately, we believe that he will have an active stake, probably over the coming weeks or months. And this is just the start of, I think, a broader strategic focus of Twitter, whether it's, changing the slate, changing the management team, or ultimately a buyout. So just to be clear, I mean, this is just the start of what I believe is going to be a much more active role for Musk at Twitter.
Oh, Dan, hold on. Elon Musk is not buying Twitter. Do you think he could actually make a play for Twitter here? This guy is trying to change the world with SpaceX and electric vehicles via Tesla. Do you think what is the probability on something like that?
Yeah, it's not about Musk himself buying Twitter. It's about him ultimately starting to become much more active. Once they go above the 10% stake in terms of strategically, whether it's getting on the board, and then ultimately, if Twitter does not listen behind the scenes, then this could be something where, ultimately from a private equity or other, could be a catalyst to a potential acquisition. I think that's sort of the streets view here. That's why the stock's up the way it is. I think there's no one out there that believes he's just going to end with a 9.2 passive stake.
And Dan, you're a longtime bull on Tesla. As an analyst that has covered this company for some time, do you want to see Elon Musk out there trying to make changes at Twitter when he's launching gigafactories around the world and making millions of electric cars?
Yeah, look, I think investors have gotten used to Musk obviously cast a massive net, right? And I think there was a view for many with SpaceX that was going to take the eye off the ball on Tesla, and obviously it's done the opposite. I think investors are fine with it. I think to some extent it just further expands the potential ecosystem of Tesla. Musk has talked about it. I mean, is he going to build the social media from the ground up? That's extremely difficult. But if you look at Twitter, you're talking about an apathetic sort of shareholder base. You're talking about a company that's really been on a treadmill, a lot of headwinds. If there was a time for him to get more aggressive, this was the time.
Dan, okay, so if he is going to increase the stake even more, if this is just the appetizer, if he's going to push for strategic changes, what are those strategic changes? I mean, basically when he's weighed in on Twitter operations on Twitter, of course, it's him fetching about that Twitter doesn't let people say what he thinks they should be able to say on Twitter. Is that really the strategic change that Twitter needs?
Look, I think it's really about monetization. It's about the eyeballs as a platform, right? That's been an issue in terms of just when you look at share gains versus other social media, it's really share losses. So, of course, the initial view is, obviously Musk gripe about Twitter, but in terms of from a shareholder perspective, would really be about monetization, the advertising. And look, social media, it's massive changes going on right now, and it feels like Twitter is in the right lane going 45 miles an hour while everyone's passing them at 80 going left lane.
Yeah, I guess what I'm asking is Musk the person who is going to make those necessary changes, right? I mean, I get that his public-facing Twitter persona is different than Musk, the CEO of Tesla. We've seen that, right? That he sort of makes a lot of noise over here on Twitter, but then effectively runs the company. But is that something that we can envision happening for Twitter also?
Well, I think that will be the question. I think it's a question for investors. But also, look, you're talking about Musk that revolutionized the auto industry with electric vehicles. Obviously, SpaceX speaks for itself in terms of really the core of the U.S. space program. So when it comes to social media, it's not like that's far flung that he at least could try to disrupt it. But Julie, to your point, it's not that he's necessarily going to control Twitter. It's more that this is the start of him becoming more active in Twitter that could ultimately force changes, whether it's on management, getting on the board or others. that really, I think the odds of many investors is a company that, their best days are in the rearview mirror. And I think that's why you're starting to see the excitement, at least from a stock perspective.
Dan, lost a little bit in the news flow this morning. As you can imagine, Hertz has linking up with Polestar to order 65,000 EVs. I look across the globe. I see Tesla rival Xpeng now expanding into Europe, going into Norway. Is Tesla's dominance in EVs starting to be at risk?
No, I mean, look, Brian, this is just really start of just this massive green tidal wave playing out. And, and even though obviously supply chain's been an issue, and we can talk about with deliveries, ultimately, I mean, we're going to see double digits of percent of automotive being EVs. You look at Polestar, you're going to look at Ford and GM, you look at Lucid and others, and it's a rising tide is lifting a lot of boats here. It's not just Tesla, but in the EV landscape, at this point, it's still Tesla's world, everyone else paying rent. And
we'll see now if with the Musk's involvement, it'll be Twitter's world too, if we see them getting back into the fast lane, to use your analogy. Dan, it's good to see you. Thanks so much. Dan Ives of Wedbush, giving us some perspective on Twitter and on Tesla this morning. We got a twofer with Dan.